Hello, 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 hello. Welcome back to the Connected Wellness Podcast. I'm Rachel Ann. I'm here with the lovely Marianne and a very lovely special guest, and we are all so passionate about wellness.
Here in this podcast, we look at the ways our physical, emotional, and spiritual health is all connected and how we can take better care of our whole selves holistically so we can live our best lives. We're really excited that you're here with us on the journey. Welcome back to episode 55 of the podcast.
Yes, 55. We are so grown. Can I just say, like the amount of tech issues we've navigated, that aged us at least 10 years. And
Yeah.
then just all of the experience that we have and the things we've
hmm
been learning. We're kind of awesome. Good job.
I love it. Well, welcome back to everyone and welcome back to Charlotte. It's so great to have you
Yes,
back as
welcome
a
back,
return
Charlotte.
Thank
guest.
you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be here today.
Yes.
So
Ah,
maybe Rachel Ann, you can tell us what we're chatting about today and why we have Charlotte specifically with us to chat about this.
yeah. So Charlotte is here because she's awesome. And we
Enough
really
said,
wanted to
right?
enough said. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all that is needed. And one of the things that a lot of people are dealing with right now is just learning how to trust in God in a whole new way and learning how to rest in the Lord in a whole new way. A lot of things are happening in the world, a lot of things are happening in people's personal lives. And so the need to care for ourselves is, I would say, higher than maybe it was before for a lot of folks. So, Charlotte is going to be here and share with us what does it mean to be praying to God? What does it mean to trust in God? What does it mean to rest in God? Do those things go together? What makes it easy? What makes it hard to trust in the Lord? Things like that. So, that's what we're going to talk about. I'm also going to introduce her with her really cool bio because she's very fancy. So, the wonderful Charlotte Crabbe. Charlotte is the founder and president of Cultivate Vibrance. Her leadership has been visionary, strategic, relational, and results oriented. Her experience is diverse, from leading a nonprofit in New York City, woo woo, to conference and event planning, to creating a DEI program that successfully created pathways for emerging leaders of color. She's done it all. Most importantly, she is a daughter, an auntie, a runner, community builder, and a woman of faith. So we are so happy to have you again, Charlotte.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here today for this
Yes.
conversation.
Thanks. Same, same, same. Um, shall we hop into our wellness wins first?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay,
I like starting on a high note. Yeah.
right? Okay, who's feeling bold? Who wants to share?
I can go
Hmm.
first. Yeah, I
Okay.
got you. Okay, so um in the Coptic Orthodox Church, we started Lent this week.
Mm.
So, it's that 55-day marathon of spirituality and asceticism and, fasting and praying. And it's a beautiful time. Now, normally I start every Lent kind of like a New Year's resolution. A
Mm.
lot of us do this where we're like, okay, this is our like Lent routine and how I'm going to increase my prayer and my fasting and my devotion time and my reading. And sometimes it gets a little bit, overwhelming because you're trying to do all of the things. You want to like do Lent perfectly, you want to be transformed. And for me, that can be overwhelming. And you kind of have maybe the same result as a New Year's resolution,
Mm.
where, after a couple weeks, you kind of fall off because it's just too much, to try to do. So, um, I've been having a rough few months, like I've said a few times. And so it didn't feel right for me to go into Lent with that same mentality of like being hardcore, spiritually, which is of course a good thing, but it just didn't feel right for me. So I decided to kind of approach this a little bit differently, just with the intention of I just want to be closer to God. I just want to feel his
Mm.
presence more. So I love
Amen.
this topic today because I would love to be able to rest with him more, especially
Mm.
during this Lent season for me. So yeah, I'm calling that a win because I'm giving myself grace. I'm not trying to do all of the things and make sure that it's the holiest time I've ever spent, the holiest season I've ever had.
Mm,
I just am going into it with God. I need you and I
mm.
want you. And like, every day I'm trying to be more intentional about the time that I spend with him.
Wow. Mm, I love that wellness win.
Thanks.
Ah, that's
What
great.
about
That's a
you?
great intention to have.
Thank you.
Um, let's see. My wellness win, if my husband is watching slash listening to this, he's going to chuckle. But my wellness win is I've come to the conclusion that I need to give up some of my house plants. And I'm so sad about it. But
No.
the reason why I know, well, the reason why it's a wellness win is because if you know me in real life, I'm kind of stubborn. I get that from my mom. Thanks, mom. And I was like, I love these plants. I don't want to let them go. But the problem is that they are not thriving in our current home. They're just not getting as much light. And my husband is like, we're sticking this lamp right there. Like, that's annoying. And I was like, you kind of have a point, babe. And they're still struggling, even with the lamp being right in their face. So I've come to the conclusion that I will be giving away these plants. And that is a big deal for me because I overcame my stubbornness. And I was like, Rachel, the priority is the health of these plants. This doesn't
Hmm.
mean that you are a failure as a plant mom. This means that what they need you cannot provide, and that's okay. And that's just what that is. So that's my wellness win. LOL husband, you win. But that's my wellness win.
Sounds like health of the plants and the health of your relationship. Both of
Yeah.
those, yeah.
Yes. How rehoming our plans saved our marriage.
Oh,
That's not dramatic at all,
Right? I'm never dramatic, never at all.
no.
So that's my wellness win.
Good
How
job,
about for,
Rachel.
thank you. How about for you, Charlotte?
yeah. Okay. So, little moment of honesty. See if I can get
Mm.
this out. Um, I hit a car earlier this week, so
Mm.
that's part.
Oh
But it
no.
was more like I call them love taps here in New York. So like a boop, and I kind of heard something, and I was like, oh shoot, that doesn't sound good.
Mm.
Um, and it just isn't the time to be hitting cars. But I said, you know what, Holy Spirit, I'm going to go back and I'm going to put my number on, paper and leave it on their windshield. So I went back
Mm.
um, and found the car, put the number on the windshield. And I was just like, okay, now's the waiting game to see, if they call back or what. And I'm on the train yesterday coming home and I get this phone call. And the man is like, Charlotte, and I probably shouldn't have said yes, this is she, but but I was like, yeah, this is Charlotte. He said, don't worry about it. I saw my bumper. It's New York City. People always get hit. It's not a big deal. I
Mm.
just appreciate your honesty. And I was like,
Oh.
and so on the train, I was just like, this is my time to have a moment because I think so many things, I feel like they just have been popping up and I've had to
Mm.
go with them. But I just needed to take my little, that stretch from 125th to 59th Street and just like
Mm.
sit and be still on the train.
Mm.
And if the baby tears come, they come. Like they kind of came.
Mm.
They come, they come. So
Yeah.
I think that was my
Oh,
like my quiet moment of thank you, God, and I'm gonna trust in you. So
yeah. That's beautiful, Charlotte. As a New Yorker, I very much understand the love tap. That's just like an average Tuesday type of thing.
yeah.
But good for you for having integrity. And for those of you who
Hmm.
are not New Yorkers and you're wondering what that 125th to 59th is, Charlotte, can you describe to our listeners that are non-New Yorkers like Marianne
Yeah,
what
yeah.
that
So
is?
basically, I don't know if it's on all the express trains. You have trains that make every stop, and then trains that just, like, I guess they kind of go express basically. So they skip stops. And so from 125th Street in Harlem to, I think it's 59th and maybe Midtown, the
Mm.
express trains just go straight through, and it's usually like a 10-minute or so ride, 8 to 10 minute
Hmm.
ride.
Hmm.
And so it's just, no one's getting off, no one's getting on. And for me, it literally felt like, um, it just felt quiet. I mean, there was a lot
Hmm.
around happening,
Mm.
but it was just a time of like just quiet and just, thanking God
Mm.
that I don't have to pay and my insurance won't go up. So
Hmm.
I'll
Amen.
get that.
I mean,
Wow.
we should always do the right thing to do the right thing, but it is really nice and encouraging when you have such a good outcome. Like you did the right
Yeah.
thing and then, God is like rewarding you. Like good for you, you did the right thing and taking care of
Yeah.
it for you. So I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh, yay for wellness wins. Yay for warm and fuzzies. Good job, y'all. Oh, God is good. All right. Shall we transition to talking about God is good in many different ways, such as prayer and trust and rest? Um, so this, like we mentioned before, this kind of came about because there's just a lot going on, and there's a lot of reasons why we need prayer and rest and trust in the Lord. And so Charlotte, we would love just to like start off to you, what does it mean to trust in the Lord, and what does it mean to have rest in the Lord?
Yeah. I would say for me, the first thing that comes to mind is about control
Mm,
and letting go of control. Um,
mm,
I say that not lightly because I think as Black women, we have an interesting relationship with control and with being controlled.
mm,
And so I'm learning, which was part of like my day yesterday. I've had this like push-pull, this dynamic between what it means to persevere and what it means to surrender. And
wow.
just being in a space of there are things that you have to do. You still have to work, you still have to be present, you still have to live in this country if you're here. And what does it look like to surrender? Um, and so when we talk about trust, I've personally been wrestling with what that looks like, because I think in certain seasons it looked a little bit more clear.
Mm,
Um, and the rest part of it felt a little bit more clear. I think the unclear part is that I'm learning what that means right now in this season. And I'm learning that, I think for me, I've already done enough work. A lot of us have already done enough things. And so we're learning what does it look like to trust God in this
mm,
season, and to let go. And
mm,
so letting go for me has meant I get the image of taking my foot off the gas, like the car is still going, but just taking my foot off the gas a
mm,
little bit,
mm,
and really resting and knowing that that God is He's gonna carry me. He's gonna carry
mm,
us through this time that we're in. But
mhm,
he is who he is. He hasn't changed. And so trying to figure out what does that look like to be able to rest in him.
mhm, mhm. Wow. Wow, that difference between surrender and perseverance.
Yeah, yeah.
I've never heard that like that. Um, wow. Can you talk a little bit more about that, and maybe in relation to the Lord of what does it mean when we are surrendering to the Lord, and what are our expectations for that, and maybe just like the difference that we have between that and perseverance?
Yeah. I'm like, how honest should I be? I can be honest. Um, I'm a founder, and so you all will probably hear a little bit about that part. And I've been in ministry for about 17, 18 years.
Mm,
It's looked different as a founder. A lot of my early years were characterized by perseverance. Just keep
mm,
going, keep doing the thing. Just keep believing, just keep making calls, just keep going to campus, just keep, right? Keep doing things.
mm,
Um, and then the surrender part comes when you start to realize everything is not always active. Some of it is going to be passive. Um,
mm,
and so the surrender part is realizing that sometimes you do all of the things, and the one thing that you need to do or that I need to do is to now trust.
mm,
It doesn't mean that I stop being active, but my hope is not in my activity. My hope really is in allowing God to carry and to create situations and to open doors and to be the
mm,
loving father that I need in this season.
Mhm.
I think for me, one of the things I'm learning when it comes to perseverance and surrender is that I still, well, knowing when to stop, knowing when to continue to do those things, like continue
Mm,
to be present in my work, in my life to people, but also knowing when it's time to just stop and to rest. Um, and then also just letting go of the outcome, letting go of the expectations that I have
mm,
attached to the activities that I am doing. A lot of
mm,
times those activities and those expectations, I end up feeling like if God doesn't meet them, then I'm now upset with him or I'm harboring something
mm,
towards him. So yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is surrender can be mistaken for complacency, right? Like to surrender
Mm,
is just to be complacent, like to not do anything, to be passive
mm,
all of the time. But that's not what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that there is a time to surrender, which is after we've done our part, right? So the trust that I'm hearing and which makes sense to me is like, okay, I do my part. Like I'm obedient. There are things that God has meant me to do, work that He has meant me to do, and I'm doing it. And then at
Mm,
some point, I kind of have to let go of the outcome, right? I did my part, but I cannot control the outcome. Only God can control the outcome.
mm,
There's a verse, I'm not sure what it is off the top of my head, but it's that he provides the increase, right? Like we
mm,
do the work, but he actually, God provides the increase. Um, that's what I'm understanding from this. Like you persevere, you do your work, but then you hands off, surrender the final outcome to God.
mm,
yeah, I think it's the final outcome. And also, I'm learning that it's almost like two concurrent roads that as I'm actively pursuing things or being faithful, that the position
mm,
of my heart is growing in surrender. And so that it's different because I think we live in a world where it's like, I'm going to vote, I'm going to do the things, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And the reality is like, my vote, my work, my emails, those are just actions of my faith. But my heart posture also is surrender to whatever it is that the Lord has for me, if that makes sense.
mm, mm. That makes sense. It's making me think about how much you really need to trust in the Lord. If you're gonna surrender, it's like, yo, I really need to trust in the Lord, like 110. Um, I'm thinking about times in my life and maybe your life where we know God is good and we know his plans for us are good. But then on the other hand of it, it's like, okay, but I'm suffering right now, God, or I'm dealing with something that I don't want to deal with, or I'm still worrying, whatever it is. Like that, I don't know. How do we like deal with that dichotomy of like, okay, we trust you, Lord. We know that you are good. We trust the plans that you have for us. And then I'm still suffering and things are hard right now. What do we do in that middle ground area?
Yeah, that's a big question. A big spectrum of what that suffering could look like. So, I think that uh, the little bit like that I feel like I'm learning and that I share with people is the part about grieving, um,
Mm,
and creating space to grieve, creating space to name what it is that you are feeling.
mm,
Creating space. One of the things, like I had something fall through that I was really, really looking forward to a few weeks ago. And I said to myself, like, I'll give myself a few minutes to be sad about this.
mm,
2 days later, it's still bothering me. But it's not just
mm,
bothering me, I'm feeling it in my body. It feels like I'm carrying like a
mm,
30-pound bag around, but I'm not
mm.
realizing that I have this weight on me. So I
Yeah.
go and sit on my couch and I just cry.
Mm,
And it's not like this isn't something, it's not going to be life-changing in any way, or it was just something that I really wanted. And it was particularly during the season where there are a lot of things that I wanted. And God had been saying,
mm,
no, not yet, not in this way. But there was something about like being able to physically allow that to leave my body that helped me
mm,
to let go. And the situation itself, it is what it is. But whatever it is in these last 2 weeks, what I've been experiencing is I need to let this go from my body. And
Yeah.
it's really the reason why I talk about rest a lot. It's not because I'm
Mm,
like a rest fanatic. It's just because that's for me the place in that cry is where I met Jesus. Like in that cry
Mm.
where it was okay to be able to not be okay. It was okay to
Mm.
say something that seemed really small, that I was excited about and that I named that I am excited about it. You know, I'm not like, oh, I'm kind of excited. No, I'm really excited about it. It's not going to happen. And so I've been having that experience, over the last 2 weeks of like, I'm not talking about like a little tear, like boohoo, ugly cry over
Mm.
things that matter. And so I think that's one of the things is to grieve, but also to allow it to leave your body. And I think even like, crying or maybe exercising were also creative ways. Like I went to a calligraphy class the day after the election, and I was like, this could go either way. But God, you know why I'm here.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it was like a meditative practice to be able to just focus my mind on something else and also be able to let that thing kind of, I wouldn't say it left me, but just to like calm my mind and have a place for that angst, that anger to go. So
mhm,
yeah.
It reminds me a lot of the episode that we had with Dana about somatic care and how our bodies, they hold on to the experiences that we have. And I think that's a really beautiful illustration, Charlotte, of just weeping and crying and lamenting with the Lord and recognizing, oh, my body's holding on to something. It feels like there's like an invisible weight here. Let me release that to the Lord. That's a beautiful example of like surrendering and trusting. You're surrendering by crying and giving it to God and then trusting in the Lord that He will take care of it. Maybe not now, but that He will take care of it.
Right, right.
Mm.
Yeah, I feel like
mm,
when I get to that point, it's like, okay, I've officially like waved the white flag and I can, it hasn't changed, but I can like walk with it. Um,
Mm.
I think in terms of like the large spectrum of like what people are experiencing, it's hard for me to like speak to that particularly
Yeah.
because I don't know, but I also think that we each will have like our moments of surrender and
Mm.
just what it looks like to say, I can't do this. Like I can't continue like this. I can't carry this on my own.
Yeah.
And I think rest gives us that space. And I think it's a gift. So whenever it comes to you, whenever you have that moment for me earlier this week, it was on the train also. I mean, that was a more, gratitude time, but that space to be able to just surrender to God. So.
Mm. Yeah.
So I'm hearing rest in your difficult times, right? So bringing your difficulty to God and mourning with Him, grieving with Him, allowing Him to kind of take some of that burden of grief from you. What else does resting with God look
Mm.
like on a daily basis? Hopefully, I don't have a rough thing happen for me today, but I still want to be able to rest in Him. What do we think
Mm.
that looks like?
Yeah, yeah. So one of my colleagues, she has put together like rest rhythms, and a few of them that I can mention is like the Pomodoro method, being able to work in sprints and then take, some time off. So I try to set 20-minute sprints. If you're like doing like a desk job or something, 20
Mm.
minutes, set a timer for 20 minutes, and then I set one for 5 minutes to be able to like get up, walk, drink some water. Um, and also, another thing is to create a list. So again, she put this together and we'll make that available soon enough. But creating a list of things that you can do for 5 minutes, an hour,
Mm.
or like a half day. And I think that's really helpful. Her name's Dominique Dawson, but putting that together so that sometimes you only have a short amount of time. So maybe it is like just get up, walk, take a breath, and come back. And that is your rest. Other times
Mm,
it's like, you're working and you have the ability to get out and walk. So, you can get out
mm,
and walk for a few minutes. Something I try to do, I've done a little bit is if you're in the city in a metropolitan area, instead of getting off at your stop, get off one or two stops early, and then just kind of
mm,
walk the rest of the way, so that you
yeah.
can be able to have that time to yourself. But when I think about rest, I'm thinking about pausing from, Rich Villodas says, anxieties and want tos, and well, not want tos, but have tos. And so just inserting different parts of your day where, you're able to just take a little break and, have that time to recalibrate for yourself.
Hmm.
I love me some Rich Villodas. He's he's a pastor here in Queens, and I forgot what his book is about. Is it about rest? I feel like it's about some contemplative practice.
Yeah, he has two. One is I think the Good
Mm.
Life or the Good something.
Mm.
And then the other one is the Red Book. Maybe that's the Good Life. There's a red book and there's a yellow book. I don't know.
So there's a red book and a yellow book that he's written, and his
I'll make sure to
Instagram.
check the bookstore for the red book and the yellow book thing. Yeah.
And on his Instagram, he posts a lot of stuff about like contemplative Christianity and like what does it mean to actually be a follower of Christ. I found a lot of his stuff to be very helpful, especially with everything that's happening right now in the church and in the United States. So I appreciate you sharing that. It's as you're saying this, Charlotte, I'm thinking about high achievers. I'm thinking about people overcoming people pleasing. I'm thinking about people who are hearing this and they're like, that's nice. I don't have time to rest. Like, if I get off two stops earlier, that means this. And so I'm curious if you have thoughts about how to overcome the difficulties to rest and what that looks like to avoid the temptation to just keep working instead of resting. What does that look like?
Mhm. Well, I'm part of the day, so let me throw myself in there. I always try
Marion
to
and I
be
are
of the
too. Welcome to the club.
chat. Um, I the first thing that comes to mind is, let's talk about that. Like, I don't have time to rest, and not so much like I don't have the time, but like, how do you, when someone brings that up, how does that hit you, and what
Mm,
comes up for you around that? Um,
mm,
and so I think for me, like, what may come up at different times is shame. It's just like, you don't understand my story, you don't understand my responsibilities.
mm,
How can you just say that, like, just rest? And so I think perhaps like having some time to unpack a little bit about like how you feel,
mm,
around the concept of rest. And then I think some of it to me is like, start where you can. So like,
mm.
my 125th to 59th Street, it's my commute. And so, it might be that I put on some John Coltrane and I tune out Showtime. And
Ah,
instead, um, I have that contemplative moment, or one of the things, is also, I'm not saying create a whole new routine, but it can also be, what are you already doing that you can purposefully do. And so if you're
mm,
eating lunch, like I know my mom sometimes she'll call me on her lunch break and she'll just be chatting. It's 4 o'clock and she calls me on her lunch break and she has 15 minutes or so. Um, so yeah, I'm thinking of start small, but also, getting curious about what feelings come up for you. And I don't think the idea is to feel shame, that
mm,
you're not doing something right, or um, that I think we all have different capacities as well. And so that's something
mm,
in mind. Some of us, I think I listened to Craig Rochelle last week, and he was like, I don't rest. But
mm,
the way that he puts his schedule together, it's not like he needs something different. He's fueled in a different way, and it works
mm,
for him. It works for him. Um,
mm,
but we're all built differently. We're all wired differently. And so you got to
mm.
figure out what that means for you. Maybe the rest is
Mm,
active. So for him, waking up at 4 a.m. and doing a 2 hour workout, that might be part of his rest rhythm. It's not part of
mm.
mine. You won't catch me. You might catch me waking up to go to the restroom at 4 a.m. You will not catch me doing that. Um,
Yeah.
so, so yeah.
Yeah, I think a big problem for a lot of us is when you mentioned shame, I was thinking about feeling shame about resting, like feeling like,
Mm,
equating rest with laziness. And this is probably something a lot of us have learned, in society or learned growing up or something like that. So it requires that we unlearn that no, you are not lazy for resting. You are really just
mm,
taking care of your body, you're taking care of your mind. And maybe I like the idea of collecting evidence that when I do allow
mm,
myself to rest, I see how much better I am afterwards.
mm,
Like if you are running on empty, the work that you're doing is not going to be the same quality as the work that you do if you give yourself the rest that you need beforehand.
yeah.
So yeah, I think that's the big problem is that we're so conditioned to believe that rest is maybe laziness, which of
Mm,
course, I think we know, and we know intellectually, probably most people know intellectually that's not true, but sometimes it's a little bit hard to internalize that.
mm,
Yeah. And I think breath, it's not laziness, it is a gift, and it's the place, if most people here are believers, it's the place where we create just a little bit more space to be able to just be with God, even if
Mhm.
it's
mm,
not necessarily opening our Bibles, but just to be with him, to understand how we're feeling, what we're thinking, and to just listen to him, to just
mm,
walk, take a walk to, see nature, like all those things allow us to be with God. For me, the idea of rest, it's both because, we're worthy of it, but it's his gift, and it's his gift for us to also to have time with him.
mm,
I think I mentioned in part one that, with the children of Israel, it was
mm,
about being able to worship and to not be under this system of
mm,
productivity and to rest. And so it is an opportunity to be with God. And I do know for high achievers that's going to be like difficult. Um,
mm,
and so you start wherever you are.
mm,
Mhm.
mm. Wow.
Yeah.
Marion, do we have time for one more question? Or
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
okay,
yeah, yeah. We have
Marion
like
keeps
10
track of
minutes. Yeah.
time.
Mhm.
Oh, okay, cool. Um, you were gonna say something?
I mean, I was just thinking that, for high achievers, like we almost think
Mm,
that that time with God has to be productive, right? And I put that in quotes because like maybe that means, oh, I'm supposed to be doing a reading or I'm supposed to be doing a
mm,
specific devotion plan or I'm supposed to be again in our Coptic tradition we have the Agbeya, so these specific prayers, like I have to be doing this specific thing in my
mm,
time with God. But what I am craving and what I'm, hearing you describe, Charlotte, is more of this just like presence, like this just,
mm,
I am with you in this moment, even if I'm not saying anything, even if I'm not doing anything. If it's just feeling the outside breeze, if it's, just sitting in this moment. And I think that that's so powerful because if you think about what it's like to be in a relationship with a human, sometimes you just sit together, like I don't have to be talking to Chris every moment that we're together, like sometimes I
mm,
just need to just sit quietly in his presence and that's what is filling me up, and what is maintaining our relationship in that moment. So, yeah, I think it's such a struggle for people like me and
mm-hmm.
maybe like you guys as well, that I just even if it's time with God, it's got to be like structured. It's got to be looking a specific way.
Mm. That's real. I feel like that's why things like devotionals, Bible plans, all of that tend to be really helpful for people. But like sometimes we can get lost in the sauce, like we can get lost in the
Mhm.
religiosity of it as opposed to the relationship that we have with God. Um, I'm curious, Charlotte, about if there's people in the Bible that come to mind for you that
Mhm.
maybe exhibit these qualities of trusting in the Lord, resting in the Lord, praying with God, surrendering, that maybe like you look up to or are just like really good examples. If we are feeling stuck, like Marianne said, then we can be like, oh, well, blah, 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 did this. Are there people in
Mhm.
the Bible that you would recommend we look into?
Yeah, so I'm always interested by the story of Elijah,
Mm,
and how he defeated the prophets of Baal. I hope I'm saying that right. And then Jezebel, he was very confident, but he
mm,
was also living through a cultural moment,
mm.
in I don't know if it's Israel at that time, but in Bible scholars don't come for me, but in the land at that time. And so his stress was compounded.
Mm,
And so after, defeating the prophets of Baal, he found himself incredibly tired, on the run, leaving his servant behind, his helper behind, and
mm,
suicidal, wanting to die.
mhm,
But the Lord sent an angel to be able to help him sleep, give him some food, and put him on his way. And so I
mm,
think that the story of Elijah reminds me, that we can be high achievers. Sometimes we also forget about the help that's around us, because he did have someone that was helping him out. But in the scriptures, it also says that there were, I believe, 500 prophets that had not yet bowed down,
mm,
to other foreign gods. And so he really wasn't alone. Um, but God had incredible compassion towards him. And so I'm
mhm,
encouraged just by how, one, how honest the conversation Elijah has with, God's angel, with God, and just the rest that God gives him, and
mm.
that he hears his frustrations, and he speaks to those as well.
Wow.
The second was a little, different, but I'm always encouraged by Hagar's story and the name that she
Mm,
gave God,
amen.
Roho,
Mm,
the God who sees,
yeah.
um, and that she experiences God's rest through knowing that God sees her in her troubles, in her pain.
Mm,
He sees what it is that she is walking through,
mm,
and that he cares for her. And so
mm,
those are two of the ones. I think of Mary and Martha as well. One has found that good thing. Um, and but the first two are the ones that usually come to mind, when I think about just an inspiration of rest and really God's care
mm,
and compassion towards us. So,
Yo, Hagar, I just read Hagar the other day and I was just like, she needs more sermons about her because she literally is the first person in the Bible who gave a name to God. A black woman, a black enslaved individual, and she called God and saying, God is the God who hears me and sees me. That is we're not here for 5 years. Otherwise, I would go off on that. But that story is so beautiful to me because what we were talking about with surrender, like what would it have been like for her in that moment to be like, Lord, you saw what just happened. Like I was gaslit in this way. I followed the directions of, my master, and here I am, and now I'm shunned out in this way. So much was happening, and she was just crying out. And God, in his goodness and in his sovereignty, was like, I'm going to let you know that I am here with you in that. So that beautiful act of surrender. Hagar, she my girl. She my girl. Um, as we start to land the plane, as the kids say, is there anything that you feel like is just so helpful um as we begin or maybe revamp our prayer time or our resting time, our trust in the Lord? Anything else that you feel like could be really helpful that you want to share?
yeah, I think we have to befriend silence, and uh, and darkness. And
Mm,
by darkness, I mean like the things that we run away from, when things are noisy. Um,
Mhm.
and so, yeah, befriending silence. I think I can speak for myself that y'all can't see the tornado around this little um, Zoom box. But it's a little crazy out here. And it is when my apartment starts to look like this, it is a reflection of what has been going on, transpiring within me and
Mm,
around me.
mhm,
Um, and it is my wake up call to say, hey, let's take some time, let's take some time to be still and figure out what's going on. So I think befriending silence and in the places that feel really dark or scary to go to in order to know that like if we go there, that God will meet us there. And that's really to
mm,
me the type of rest that I want people to know is available is that I think sometimes we are afraid of being afraid. And in that
mm,
fear, God can meet us and give us rest for our souls. Um,
mm. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, we're so avoidant of uncomfortable emotions and uncomfortable feelings. I mean that, yeah, yeah, and I feel like we've mentioned this before, but like you cannot heal what you're not willing to reveal, so like you have to be able to see them yourself and bring them to the surface and bring them to God. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I heard you use the term earlier, Charlotte, rest routine. Is that right?
yeah, rest routine, rest rhythm. Yeah.
Rest
Mm,
rhythm. Oh, that was the word. Okay. I knew there was alliteration there. So rest rhythm. So that's kind of my takeaway is thinking about developing a rest rhythm and what
mm,
can work with my current um daily routines and rhythms, like you said, like instead of recreating it from scratch, like how can I kind of build in times of rest. And I like that you mentioned your commute. We talked about the value of a commute before.
mm,
And if you don't have a commute because you work from home, about kind of like making a 5-10 minute routine, of when you're transitioning to work or after work. And yeah, so I like that, a rest rhythm. That's what I'll be
mm,
thinking about. Yeah.
mhm. Oh, Charlotte, we are so grateful for you. You have shared so much with us, and I think that wherever people are in their journey of wondering what it means to rest in the Lord or trust in the Lord or revamping a devotional life, you've given us a lot to be thinking about. Do you have anything coming up? Do you have ways people can connect with you? Anything like that?
Yeah, yeah. So we have a few things coming up. I think probably most pressing for this audience, we have Camp Wellness. And so it's an embodied rest experience for Black women. And so what I love about it is that we have movement, we have devotionals, we're in nature, but
Mm.
it is covered and it is, air controlled. So if you're like, I like nature, but I don't like nature, we got you because I'm the same way. I want to see it. I don't want to like be immersed in it. So that is a soul care retreat, May
Mm,
2nd and 3rd. Definitely go to our website, www.cultivatevibrance.org/events, and you can see Cultivate or Camp Wellness there. Where you can find
mm,
me, the organization, our Instagram is cultivate_vibrance. And then personally, which I don't usually do, but I think I like y'all. Um, my
we're
Instagram
honored.
is at Charmaine_Swift. So it's still a little bit of an alias, but if you get it, you get it. And I'll add you there. So yeah.
Oh, well, I feel very special that we know your personal Instagram. Thank you
Yeah,
so
yeah.
much, Charlotte. Uh, what a lovely, lovely conversation. We are so grateful for you. And we would love to hear from y'all. What are your thoughts about rest and trust in the Lord? What's hard for you about that? Let us know in the comments. Hit up Charlotte because she be knowing how to deal with everything. So I'm here for it. You can connect with us on Instagram. We're there at Connected Wellness Podcast. We're also on Facebook at Connected Wellness Podcast. If you want to email us, we're at connectedwellnesspodcast@gmail.com. If you want to reach out to Marian specifically, you can find her on Instagram at Waba Saba. If you want to reach out to me specifically, you can find me on Instagram at Real with Rachel Ann. All of those links, including the links that Charlotte shared with us, we'll put that down below. So make sure you sign up for Camp Wellness. That's the one that I'm going to, right? I signed up
Yeah,
for
yeah,
something. Okay. I was
yeah.
like, I signed up for something with Cultivate, but I forgot what it was. So yeah, come hang out with us in New York, y'all. It's gonna be a really good time. Thank you for having air conditioning because I hate the heat. And I will hand it over to Marianne.
Thank you so much, Charlotte, for being here again. It was lovely to have you, and yeah, a lot to think about.
Mhm.
Thanks everyone for tuning in, and until next time, get some rest and be well.
Yes. Be well, everybody. Bye.